Mika, there's just so much here that's it's just astounding. Again, we've talked about the Republican Party and where the Republican Party's gone with the defeat of Mark Sanford, a man who was actually endorsed by the Freedom Caucus, who was endorsed by Jim Jordan, who was endorsed by Mark Meadows, who was endorsed by anybody, Paul Ryan, endorsed by anyone who believes, like Mark Sanford has believed for a quarter of a century, in smaller government, in less regulations, in entitlement reform, in saving future generations from massive, overwhelming debt. For anybody who believes in that, Mark Sanford was their candidate. But for those who didn't vote for Mark Sanford, it is an example of where the Republican Party's gone, and that it is a personality cult. Yeah. And, you know, Eddie, that may feel good in the moment for Republicans in South Carolina one that says, the hell with conservative principles. The hell with our lifelong belief in small government. The hell with everything that we and our party have held dear for decades. We're now going to completely put our conscience and our ideology in a blind trust for Donald Trump. That may feel good today for him, I guess. But boy, a hard rain's going to fall come November in places like Virginia and across the country, where they're electing these extremists that pledge allegiance to Donald Trump but know nothing about being conservative.
Well, Joe, I think you're right. And you know, as a religious studies scholar, I'm going to put my PhD hat on now. And you know, we got to be careful with our use of the word cult, right? Because it doesn't really have kind of the analytical clarity for us that we might want it to do. But I understand what we're registering. I just wanted to say that for my scholars out there.
There you go.
Amen.
But I want to ask you this question, though, Joe. It's common political sense that when Republicans run in their primaries, that they have to run right. They have to play to their base. Mm-hmm. And in playing to their base, they knew that they could not, when it came to the general election, make the same claims, that they would have to run back in some ways to the center. What is happening to that logic? Is it the case that the base that they had to appeal to in the primary has now metastasized and become the party itself? So what I'm trying to say is that, are we thinking about Trumpism as something distinct and unique from what was happening among Republicans throughout their primaries, or is there some relationship between the two? Because I'm trying to think about Trumpism as being a part of the Republican Party, that it reflects Buchananism. It reflects what Republicans had to do in terms of appealing to their base in their primary. So I'm trying to understand how we describe Trumpism in this moment. Does that make sense?
It does, and there are two ways to look at it. You could, first of all, look at it just in terms of what's going on today. And you could look at the changes in the Republican Party, that there has been a dark underside to the Republican Party and conservatism, which has usually been checked by whether it's John McCain or Mitt Romney or George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush or Ronald Reagan. That dark underbelly it has usually been checked by the leader of the party. Jeb Bush, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush would always talk about, would always push back and let Republicans know that actually reaching out to voters in groups that they weren't comfortable with, like Hispanic voters, was extraordinarily important. George W. Bush wasn't calling Hispanics breeders. He was going there campaigning hard. He got 44% of the vote of Hispanic voters in 2004. Donald Trump is playing to the lowest common denominator, and I think that's one part of the story. And so, yes, we have seen the ugliest side of Republicanism metastasize, and it now has become all about Donald Trump and his collection of prejudices and resentments. There's another part of it, though, And sadly, I don't think that this is just in the Republican Party. I think it's in the Democratic Party as well. Tribalism. Just pure, unadulterated tribalism where people in a party line up before their leader no matter what. I could get you quotes from top Democratic leaders when the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke out, saying that if this is true, then Bill Clinton needs to resign. Patrick Moynihan, I believe, said that. Well, it became true. And you had, and Maureen Dowd has written about this often, you had a lot of women that knew better, lining up to attack Monica Lewinsky and defend Bill Clinton because power was preeminent. They had a seat at the table. They had a president who supported the things that they supported. He even supported partial birth abortions. He was their man. He would go to the wall for them on policy, so his personal life didn't really matter. We all know that the chickens came home to roost, right? Read Maureen Dowd's column this past week. Read Maureen Dowd's column during the campaign. And we saw there was a payment that became due ultimately for not only the Clintons, but the Democrats and the women who blindly followed Bill Clinton when they should have spoken out. I am certain, Mika, that the same thing is going to happen to these Republicans who are blindly following Donald Trump. But I guarantee you, it will not take 16 years for this bill to come due. This bill will come due much more quickly, and the price paid by these sycophants will be much greater politically. They will be swept from power, and it may be a very long time before there is another Republican sitting in the White House.
Willie, my mother called me yesterday and just said they're wrecking the country. They're just wrecking everything. And she was despondent.
Well, to underline Joe's point, you just had Mark Sanford, one of the leading lights of the conservative movement for a quarter century now. When asked what he would say to Republicans running for Congress, he said the politics are simple. Pledge allegiance to Donald Trump. No. That's where the party is right now. And if you don't believe it, read the tweet last night from Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman of the Republican Party, in which she writes, anyone that does not embrace the real Donald Trump agenda of making America great again will be making a mistake. This is about a man, not a party or ideas.
Still ahead on Morning Joe, two people who know a lot about Michael Cohen's ties to the Russia investigation. Member of the House Intel Committee, Jim Himes, and Vanity Fair reporter Emily Jane Fox, who's broken several scoops. They join us next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.